Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to this very distinguished panel for being here today. You know, I think this case is wrong. I think the conclusion is wrong by the Supreme Court. I think that its reasoning here is so deeply and desperately flawed. But most important, I think the opinion is completely unpersuasive to the American people. The idea that there is this conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority will have no meaning to the American people, even if it has some meaning to other courts, which I doubt. The court cited almost no authority for its core conclusions here. The longstanding Supreme Court precedent requires it to balance branches' competing interests when there are separation of powers questions. It never engaged in that kind of balancing or cited precedent. It pointed to language from Youngstown Sheet and Tube versus Sawyer, recognizing, quote, the president's authority to act necessarily stems either from an act of Congress or from the Constitution itself. And then it went on with reasoning that is almost impossible to follow. And the opinion was by the Chief Justice of the United States. I think the court really committed a self-inflicted wound here at a time when its credibility is already plummeting. For the Chief Justice of the United States to engage in this kind of substandard opinion, I think is a tragedy. Even if you agree with the result, even if you think there should be some degree of immunity, the quality of this opinion, I think, is so deeply unpersuasive and will be so to the American people that I think it will be a lasting stain on the court. So I want to ask about that wound that the court has inflicted in this opinion, self-inflicted wound that is among others that it has imposed on itself. Mr. Lacavara, maybe you can talk about how the court's credibility is essential to its exercise of power and how destroying that credibility, and I think this partisan divide on this committee reflects what the American people are thinking, which is justices are just politicians in robes. And they've been cited for conflicts of interest. They take cruises on people's boats. They fly on other people's planes. And they're engaged in this political exercise and then put out opinions that seem to have no real persuasive power. What does that do to the court?
Senator, I think that's the perhaps the most upsetting part to me of this decision, that it reinforces what is a growing lack of confidence in the court. And for me and for many others who have spent their lives venerating the Supreme Court and trying to promote the importance of the rule of law as exemplified by the rules laid down by the Supreme Court, it's particularly destructive for the court, and I think you've aptly termed it, to impose upon itself a self-inflicted wound. There was a famous article called the Least Dangerous Branch, which was written back, I think, in the 1950s, and it was in the context of both the court's role in trying to disestablish segregation and push forward civil liberties of various kinds. And the point of the article was the court depends for the effectiveness of its rulings on public acceptance. At the last analysis, it's the effect of the court depends on the public's belief that the decisions are honest, honorable, well justified, and persuasively explained. And I think this decision fails those tests, and that is, in my view, the most troublesome aspect of it.
The court has no armies, it has no police force. It depends on public acceptance and its own credibility for enforcement and obeyance. And, I was a law clerk, like a couple of the members of this panel, for a Supreme Court justice. I've argued 4 cases in the United States Supreme Court. I have the utmost respect, in fact, reverence for the Supreme Court as an institution. And I am so deeply saddened by where this opinion and others and some of the violations of decent ethics standards are taking the court these days. My time has expired. Again, my thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to each of you, thank you.